The stars looked different through the observation window of the Earth Defense Station. Commander Jake Morrison stood with his hands behind his back, watching the distant lights of approaching ships. They were not human ships. After decades of wondering if humanity was alone in the universe, the answer had finally arrived 3 days ago in the form of a transmission from the Valorian Confederation. Jake was a tall man with gray streaks in his dark hair, earned from 20 years of military service. He had seen many things in his career, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The aliens were coming and they wanted to talk. Lieutenant Sophie Blake entered the observation deck carrying a datapad. She was young, only 32, but she was the best xenobiologist Earth had to offer. Her blonde hair was tied back in a practical ponytail, and her blue eyes showed both excitement and concern. "They'll be here in 10 minutes, Sophie said, standing beside Jake. "The translation systems are ready. We've prepared the meeting room according to their specifications." Jake nodded slowly. "What do we know about them?" Sophie scrolled through her datapad. "The Valorians are an old species. They've been exploring space for over 5,000 years. They've made contact with hundreds of different alien races. According to their transmissions, they see themselves as peacekeepers and scientists." "And what do they want from us?" Jake asked. "Cultural exchange," they said. "They want to learn about our planet, our biology, our ecosystems. In return, they're offering technology and knowledge." Sophie paused. "But there's something in their tone that bothers me." "What do you mean?" "They talk about Earth like it's a curiosity, like we're children who just learned to walk. There's a condescension in their messages that I don't like." Jake smiled slightly. "Then maybe it's time to teach them a lesson about underestimating Earth." The alien ship docked with the station exactly on schedule. The Valorians valued precision above almost everything else. When the airlock opened, 3 figures stepped through into the human station. Captain Zethrock was the leader of the delegation. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the station lights. His eyes were large and golden, giving him an expression of perpetual curiosity. He wore a uniform that looked more like ceremonial robes than practical clothing. Behind him walked Science Officer Krellman, shorter and stockier than the captain, with darker blue skin and the same golden eyes. He carried several devices that Jake assumed were scanning equipment. The third Valorian was a female named Shira Nell, their cultural specialist. She moved with grace, her silver hair flowing despite the artificial gravity of the station. "Greetings, humans of Earth," Zethrock said in perfect English, thanks to the translation device attached to his collar. "We are honored to make contact with your species." Jake stepped forward and extended his hand. The Valorian looked at it with confusion for a moment before Sophie whispered something to Shira Nell, who quickly explained the human custom. Zethrock grasped Jake's hand awkwardly. "Welcome to Earth Defense Station," Jake said. "We're pleased to meet you. This is Lieutenant Sophie Blake, our head of xenobiology." Sophie shook hands with each of the Valorians in turn. Krellman seemed particularly interested in her, scanning her with one of his devices without asking permission. Sophie raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "Your station is quite primitive," Krellman said matter-of-factly, "but adequate for your level of development, I suppose." Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he maintained his professional demeanor. "We've found it serves our needs well." The group moved to the conference room where a large display screen dominated one wall. The Valorians sat on one side of the table, the humans on the other. It felt more like a negotiation than a friendly first contact. Zethrock activated a holographic projector, and images of the Valorian homeworld appeared above the table. It was beautiful, with purple skies and green oceans. Cities of crystal and light covered the surface. "This is Valoria Prime," the captain said with obvious pride. "We have shaped our world into a paradise. No war, no poverty, no disease. We have eliminated all threats to our civilization." Sophie leaned forward, genuinely interested. "All threats? What about natural predators? Dangerous weather? Geological events?" Shiranel smiled in a way that seemed almost pitying. "We controlled our evolution thousands of years ago. We removed aggressive traits from our species and eliminated all dangerous creatures from our world. Our weather is managed by orbital platforms. Our planet is stable and safe." "Safe," Jake repeated, exchanging a glance with Sophie. "That must be very comfortable." "It is the logical endpoint of civilization," Krellman said. "Only primitive worlds still struggle with danger and death from their environment. As you advance, you too will learn to create a safer world." Sophie's expression remained neutral, but Jake could see the flash of annoyance in her eyes. She pulled up Earth images on the display screen. Forests, oceans, mountains, deserts. Earth is indeed different from your world, Sophie said carefully. We have a complex relationship with our environment. Many species share our planet, and our ecosystems are interconnected in ways we're still learning to understand. Zethrock nodded as if speaking to a student. Yes, this is common for developing worlds. You lack the technology to control your biosphere. Perhaps we can help you with this. We could teach you how to eliminate dangerous species and create a more manageable planet. Jake felt his patience wearing thin. We're not interested in eliminating species from our planet. Every creature has a role in our ecosystems. Even the dangerous ones? Krellman asked with amusement. Surely you would be better off without creatures that harm your people. Sophie set down her data pad and looked directly at the Valorian science officer. You asked to learn about Earth's biology. You wanted samples and data for your research. Are you interested in understanding our world? Or are you just here to lecture us about how primitive we are? The room fell silent. Chironel looked uncomfortable, shifting in her seat. Zethrock's golden eyes widened slightly, as if surprised that the humans would push back. We meant no offense, the captain said after a moment. We are simply trying to offer our assistance. We have experience with many worlds, but not with Earth, Jake said firmly. Before we agree to any exchange of information or technology, perhaps you should learn more about what makes our planet unique. Sophie, why don't you prepare a presentation for our guests? Show them some of Earth's fascinating creatures. Sophie's smile was genuine now. I'd be happy to. I think the Valorians will find Earth's wildlife very educational. Krellman waved a hand dismissively. I have studied hundreds of worlds. I'm sure Earth's fauna is no different from any other Class M planet. Simple predators, basic survival instincts, nothing remarkable. We'll see, Sophie said quietly. The meeting ended with plans for a formal exchange presentation the following day. The Valorians returned to their ship and Jake and Sophie remained in the conference room. They have no idea, Sophie said, pulling up files on her data pad. They think they've seen everything. Jake walked to the window looking at Earth hanging in the darkness below. Show them what a real world looks like. Show them what made humanity strong. Sophie began organizing her presentation, selecting examples that would challenge everything the Valorians thought they knew. She started with the small creatures, the ones that seemed harmless. That was always the best way to teach a lesson. Tomorrow, the Valorians would learn that Earth was unlike any world they had ever encountered. Tomorrow, they would understand why humanity had never needed to eliminate danger to survive. They had learned to live with it, adapt to it, and become stronger because of it. Sophie smiled as she worked late into the night, building a presentation that would change the Valorians' perspective forever. The conference room was dimmer than the day before. Sophie had adjusted the lighting for her presentation, and the large display screen glowed softly in the darkness. Jake sat beside her, curious to see how the Valorians would react to what she had prepared. The three aliens entered and took their seats. Krellman still carried his scanning devices and he wore an expression of boredom, as if this presentation was merely a formality he had to endure before getting to more important matters. Good morning, Sophie said, standing beside the screen. Thank you for agreeing to this educational exchange. I've prepared an overview of some of Earth's more interesting creatures. I thought we'd start with something small. The screen showed an image of a honeybee, fuzzy and golden, sitting on a flower. Chironel leaned forward with interest. How beautiful, the cultural specialist said. Such a lovely little creature. This is a honeybee, Sophie explained. They're insects that live in colonies of up to 60,000 individuals. They pollinate plants and produce honey, which humans use as food. Krellman yawned. Yes, we have similar insects on many worlds. Harmless herbivores, quite common. Sophie nodded slowly. They are herbivores, but they're not harmless. Honeybees have a defensive mechanism. They can sting, injecting venom into any creature they perceive as a threat to their colony. Zethrock tilted his head. Venom, such a small creature carries venom? Yes, and while one sting is painful but rarely dangerous, bees can swarm by the thousands. There are documented cases of humans being stung over 1,000 times and dying from the attack. The Valorians exchanged glances. Sophie played a video of an aggressive bee swarm. Thousands of insects moving like a living cloud. The sound of their buzzing filled the room. But surely humans simply avoid these creatures, Chironel said, looking uncomfortable. We can't, Sophie replied. Bees are essential to our agriculture. They pollinate crops that feed billions of people. We need them, so we learn to work with them carefully, to respect their space, to protect ourselves when necessary. Some humans even keep bees intentionally harvesting honey despite the risk. Krellman made a dismissive sound. A minor danger. I expected worse from a developing world. Sophie changed the image. A small ant appeared on screen, black and unremarkable. This is a bullet ant, she said. It's about 2.5 centimeters long. It lives in rainforests in Central and South America. An ant, Krellman said flatly. You're showing us ants. This ant has the most painful sting of any insect on Earth. Humans who study pain have created a scale, and the bullet ant is at the very top. People who have been stung describe waves of burning, throbbing pain that can last for 24 hours. Some say it feels like being shot, which is why it's called the bullet ant. Sophie played video footage of a human researcher who had been stung. The man was clearly in severe distress, unable to stand, his arms swollen and trembling. The Valorians watched in silence. One tiny ant did that? Zethrock asked quietly. One tiny ant. And they live in colonies. There are indigenous tribes on Earth that use bullet ant gloves as a coming-of-age ritual. Young men must wear gloves filled with hundreds of these ants for 10 minutes to prove their strength and endurance. That's barbaric, Chironel whispered. It's survival, Jake said from his seat. Learning to endure pain, to function through it, to respect the dangers around you. That's what living on Earth teaches. Sophie moved to the next slide. The image showed something that looked like a transparent jellyfish, delicate and almost invisible in the water. This is a box jellyfish, Sophie said. It lives in the oceans around Australia and Southeast Asia. It's almost invisible in the water, which makes it particularly dangerous. It's beautiful, Chironel said softly. It's deadly. The box jellyfish has venom powerful enough to kill a human in minutes. The sting causes immediate, intense pain. But worse than that, the venom attacks the heart, nervous system, and skin cells simultaneously. People who survive describe it as the worst pain imaginable. Many don't survive long enough to reach medical help. Sophie showed medical images of box jellyfish stings. The Valorians looked away from the screen. The marks on human skin were horrifying. Raised welts that looked like they had been burned with acid. And humans still swim in these waters? Krellman asked, his voice no longer dismissive. Yes, we wear protective suits. We post warning signs. We train lifeguards to respond quickly. But we don't abandon our oceans just because they're dangerous. We learn, we adapt, we survive. Zethrock stood up from his chair, walking closer to the screen. How many of these dangerous creatures does your world have? Sophie smiled. We've only just started. There are millions of species on Earth. Many of them can harm or kill humans. Some are insects, some are fish, some are reptiles, some are mammals. Danger exists at every level of our ecosystem. Why? Chironel asked, genuinely confused. Why would evolution create so many dangerous things? Because danger drives evolution, Sophie explained. Predators become better hunters, so prey becomes better at hiding and escaping. Prey develops defenses, so predators develop new strategies. It's an endless cycle of adaptation. Every creature on Earth is the product of millions of years of survival pressure. Jake stood and walked to the window, looking at Earth below. Your people eliminated danger from your world. You engineered it away, controlled it, removed it. That's one path. We took a different path. We kept the danger and learned to live with it. Both approaches created advanced civilizations, but they created very different kinds of people. Krellman set down his scanning device. For the first time since arriving, he seemed to be taking the humans seriously. What other creatures do you have? Sophie pulled up the next file. Would you like to continue the presentation? The three Valorians looked at each other. Finally, Zethrock nodded. Yes, we need to understand your world better. Please continue. The next section covers larger creatures, Sophie said. Predators that hunt on land and in water. These are the ones that shaped human evolution most directly. Our ancestors lived alongside these animals for millions of years. She showed an image of a saltwater crocodile. Massive and ancient-looking, its jaws open to display rows of teeth. Chironel made a sound of distress. That's real? That lives on your planet? Saltwater crocodiles can grow up to 6 meters long and weigh over 1,000 kilograms. They're ambush predators that can remain perfectly still in water, looking like logs until prey comes close. Then they strike faster than the human eye can follow. Their bite force is the strongest of any living animal. They perform what we call a death roll, spinning rapidly in the water to tear apart their prey. Sophie played video footage of a crocodile hunting. The Valorians watched in horrified fascination as the massive reptile exploded from the water, dragging a large animal under in seconds. These creatures have existed for over 80 million years, Sophie continued. They survived the same event that killed the dinosaurs. They're nearly perfect predators, unchanged because they don't need to change. They're already excellent at what they do. And humans live near these monsters? Krellman asked. Millions of humans live in areas where crocodiles hunt. We've learned their behavior. We know where they hunt, when they hunt, how they hunt. We take precautions. Some humans even study them up close, tagging them for research, learning more about them every year. Jake added, knowledge is survival. The more we understand these creatures, the better we can coexist with them. We don't fear them blindly. We respect them, study them, and learn from them. Zethrock returned to his seat slowly. I'm beginning to understand why your species developed advanced technology so quickly. You needed it to survive. That's part of it, Sophie agreed. But it's more than that. Living with danger taught us to cooperate, to plan, to innovate. Every challenge made us stronger. Every threat made us smarter. She prepared the next image. Are you ready to continue? The Valorians looked tired, overwhelmed by what they had already learned. But Zethrock straightened in his chair and nodded firmly. Yes, show us more. We need to understand what kind of world produces humans. Sophie smiled and pulled up the next file. The presentation was far from over, and the Valorians had only begun to grasp the reality of Earth. The real surprises were still to come. The presentation had been running for 2 hours, and the Valorians looked increasingly uncomfortable. Chironel had stopped smiling entirely. Krellman had put away his scanning devices and was now leaning forward, watching the screen with intense focus. Zethrock's golden eyes had widened with each new revelation. Sophie took a drink of water and prepared the next section of her presentation. Lieutenant Danny Carter had joined them during the break. He was a marine biologist with sun-weathered skin and friendly brown eyes. He had spent years studying ocean predators. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Lieutenant Danny Carter, Sophie said. He'll be presenting information about our ocean predators. Danny stood and smiled at the Valorians. Good to meet you all. I understand you've been learning about Earth's more interesting residents. I'm here to talk about what lives in our oceans. The screen changed to show a massive shark swimming through blue water. It was gray and white, sleek and powerful, with black eyes that seemed to stare through the camera. This is a great white shark, Danny said. It's one of the ocean's apex predators. They can grow up to 6 meters long and weigh over 2,000 kilograms. They have multiple rows of serrated teeth, each one designed to cut through flesh and bone. Zethrock leaned back in his chair. How fast can they swim? They can reach speeds of 56 kilometers per hour in short bursts. They hunt by ambushing prey from below, often breaching completely out of the water. They can detect a single drop of blood in 25 million drops of ocean water. Their sense of smell is so refined that they can track wounded prey from kilometers away. Danny showed footage of a great white shark attacking a seal. The violence and speed of the attack made Chironel cover her mouth with her hand. And humans swim in water with these creatures? She asked quietly. Every day, Danny replied. Millions of people swim in the ocean for recreation. Surfers, divers, swimmers. We know sharks are there. Attacks are rare, but they happen. We accept the risk because the ocean is important to us. It's where we find food, where we conduct research, where we find peace and enjoyment. Krellman shook his head slowly. Your species is either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Jake laughed. Maybe both. But that's what makes us human. We don't let fear control us. We understand danger and we move forward anyway. Danny changed the image. A massive white bear appeared on screen, standing on ice. Its fur thick and pure white except for its black nose and eyes. This is a polar bear, Danny said. The largest land predator on Earth. Males can weigh up to 700 kilograms. They live in the Arctic, one of the harshest environments on our planet. Temperatures drop to minus 50 degrees Celsius. Most life cannot survive there. Polar bears thrive. They look almost peaceful, Chironel said, studying the image. They're not. A polar bear can smell a seal from over a kilometer away. They can run at speeds of 40 kilometers per hour despite their size. Their paws are 30 centimeters across and they can kill a human with a single swipe. They have no natural fear of humans. To a polar bear, a human is just another potential meal. Sophie added, there are researchers who study polar bears in their natural habitat. They track them, observe them, collect data. It's dangerous work, but it helps us understand these animals and protect them. Zethrock stood up again, pacing near the window. Protect them? You protect the creatures that hunt you? Yes, Sophie said simply. Because they're part of our world. They have a right to exist. Polar bears are threatened by climate change. The ice they need is melting. Many humans are working to save them despite the danger these animals represent. The captain turned to face the humans. I don't understand your species. You live alongside creatures that can kill you, and you work to save them. This makes no logical sense. It makes perfect sense to us, Jake said. These animals shaped our world. They're part of the system that keeps Earth alive. Remove the predators and the prey populations explode. Remove the prey and the predators starve. Remove either one and ecosystems collapse. We learned this lesson the hard way many times throughout our history. Danny pulled up a new image and Krellman actually stood up from his chair. The creature on screen looked absurd, like someone had combined parts of different animals incorrectly. It had a massive barrel-shaped body, short legs, tiny ears, and an enormous mouth. What is that? The Valorian science officer asked. That's a hippopotamus, Danny said. It lives in rivers and lakes in Africa. It weighs up to 3,000 kilograms, and before you think it looks harmless because it's an herbivore, let me tell you something important. Hippos kill more humans in Africa than lions, crocodiles, or any other large animal. But it eats plants, Chironel said, confused. Yes, but it's extremely territorial and aggressive. Hippos have massive jaws that can open over a meter wide. Their teeth are 50 centimeters long and razor sharp. They can bite a crocodile in half. They can run faster than humans on land, and they're even more dangerous in water. Hippos kill hundreds of people every year. The video showed a hippo attacking a boat, its jaws clamping down on the side of the vessel, shaking it like a toy. The people inside were screaming, trying to paddle away. The hippo pursued them until they reached shore. They're one of the most dangerous animals in Africa, Danny continued. They look slow and gentle, but they're incredibly fast and violent when threatened. They defend their territory fiercely. Many attacks happen when people accidentally come between a hippo and the water, cutting off its escape route. Zethrock sat down heavily. Every animal you show us is deadlier than the last. How does your species survive on such a world? We're smart, Jake said. We learned to read animal behavior. We learned which areas to avoid and when to avoid them. We learned to use tools, to build shelters, to create weapons. We learned to work together because alone humans are relatively weak. But together we're incredibly strong. Sophie stood and walked to the display. There's something important you need to understand about Earth. These creatures aren't anomalies. They're not rare exceptions. Danger exists everywhere on our planet. In the water, on land, in the air, even in the soil. In the soil? Chironel asked weakly. Yes. There are parasites, bacteria, fungi, all kinds of microscopic life that can harm or kill humans. We've had to develop medicine, sanitation, agriculture, all while dealing with threats at every level of existence. Danny brought up a graph showing human population over time. Look at this. For most of human history, our numbers were small. Disease, predators, accidents, starvation, all of these kept our population low. But each challenge made us innovate. We learned to farm, to build cities, to create medicine, to develop technology. Every obstacle we overcame made us stronger. Krellman was studying his scanning device again, but this time he seemed to be analyzing data rather than dismissing it. Your planet has forced your species to constantly adapt. You've never had the luxury of safety. No, Sophie agreed. Safety is something we create through knowledge and preparation. It's not given to us. We earn it every day. Zethrock looked at Jake seriously. When we arrived, I thought Earth was a primitive world. I thought we would teach you how to advance, how to improve your planet. I was wrong. Your world has taught you lessons that my people forgot thousands of years ago. What lessons? Jake asked. That comfort can make you weak. That eliminating all danger eliminates the drive to improve. That surviving in a challenging environment creates strong, resourceful people. The captain paused. We Valorians are advanced in technology, but I wonder now if we've lost something important. We no longer face challenges. We no longer need to adapt. We simply exist in our perfect, safe world. Sophie nodded slowly. Different paths create different strengths. Your people achieved peace and stability. That's valuable. Our people achieved resilience and adaptability. That's also valuable. Is there more to your presentation? Shiranel asked, though she looked almost afraid of the answer. Yes, Danny said. We haven't even covered apex predators yet. We haven't discussed venomous creatures, parasites, or the microscopic dangers, and we definitely haven't talked about the deadliest creature on Earth. The three Valorians looked at each other with obvious concern. Finally, Zethrock spoke. We need a break. This is overwhelming. We need time to process what we've learned so far. Of course, Sophie said. We'll reconvene in 2 hours. There's a dining area where you can rest. We've prepared food that's safe for your biology. The Valorians left the conference room, speaking to each other in low voices. Jake, Sophie, and Danny remained behind. They're scared, Danny observed. They should be, Sophie said. We've only shown them a fraction of what Earth has to offer. Wait until they learn about our smaller predators. Wait until they understand how many ways death can come on our planet. Jake smiled. They came here thinking they'd find primitive humans on a backward world. Instead, they're learning that Earth is a crucible that forged one of the most resilient species in the galaxy. Do you think they'll want to continue the presentation? Danny asked. Sophie looked at her notes at the long list of creatures she still needed to cover. Yes, they're scared, but they're also curious. They want to understand. And more than that, I think they're starting to respect us. Good, Jake said. Respect is what we need. 2 hours later, the Valorians returned to the conference room. They looked tired, but their expressions showed determination. They needed to understand this strange, dangerous world that humanity called home. Sophie had been joined by another colleague, Dr. Lisa Grant. She was an epidemiologist with curly red hair and sharp green eyes. Her specialty was diseases and microscopic threats, and she had prepared a presentation that would challenge everything the Valorians thought they knew about danger. Welcome back, Sophie said as everyone took their seats. I hope you had a chance to rest. This next section will cover some of Earth's smaller threats, things you can't see coming. Lisa stood and smiled at the aliens. I'm Dr. Lisa Grant. I study diseases and parasites. Before I begin, I want to ask you something. On your world, what kills most of your people? Zethrock thought for a moment. Old age. Our medical technology has eliminated almost all diseases. Accidents are rare because of our safety protocols. Most Valorians live for over 200 years and die peacefully when their bodies simply wear out. That's remarkable, Lisa said genuinely. On Earth, for most of our history, old age was a luxury most people never reached. Disease, infection, parasites, they killed billions of humans over the centuries. She pulled up an image of a tiny mosquito. Shiranel actually laughed. That's your dangerous creature? That insect is smaller than the ants you showed us earlier. This is a mosquito, Lisa said calmly, and it's responsible for more human deaths than any other creature in history. More than sharks, more than crocodiles, more than bears or lions or any of the predators you've seen. This tiny insect has killed more humans than all of our wars combined. The laughter stopped immediately. Krellman leaned forward. How is that possible? Mosquitoes feed on blood. When they bite a human, they can transmit diseases. Malaria, dengue fever, yellow fever, Zika virus, West Nile virus. The list goes on. Malaria alone has killed hundreds of millions of people throughout human history. Even today, with modern medicine, malaria kills over 400,000 people every year. Lisa showed medical footage of people suffering from malaria. Fever, convulsions, organ failure. The Valorians watched in silence. A creature that small causes so much death? Zethrock asked quietly. Yes, and they're everywhere. Mosquitoes live on every continent except Antarctica. Billions of them. They breed in standing water, which means they live near human populations. We can't eliminate them without damaging entire ecosystems. So we fight them with medicine, with prevention, with research, but they're still killing us. Sophie added, This is the reality of Earth. Danger doesn't always come from massive predators with huge teeth. Sometimes the deadliest threats are invisible or so small you barely notice them until it's too late. Lisa changed the slide. Let me tell you about parasites. There are organisms on Earth that live inside other organisms. They use hosts to survive and reproduce. The next image made Shiranel stand up from her chair. It showed a larva emerging from human skin. This is a botfly larva. The adult fly lays eggs on mosquitoes or other insects. When those insects bite a human, the eggs transfer to the skin. The eggs hatch and the larvae burrow into the human body. They live under the skin, feeding on tissue, growing larger for weeks. Eventually, they emerge to complete their life cycle. That's horrifying, Shiranel whispered. It gets worse. There are parasitic wasps that lay their eggs inside other insects. When the eggs hatch, the larvae eat their host from the inside out, keeping it alive as long as possible to ensure fresh food. There are parasites that live in human intestines, some growing up to 10 meters long. There are amoebas that can enter the human body through the nose and eat brain tissue. Lisa showed image after image. Krellman had stopped taking notes. He just stared at the screen, his face pale. "Your species lives with all of these threats?" he asked. "Every day," Lisa replied. "We develop treatments. We study prevention methods. We teach people how to avoid infection. But yes, these parasites are part of life on Earth. They've always been here, and they'll always be here." Danny stood up to take over the presentation again. "Now let me tell you about venomous creatures. We touched on this earlier with the box jellyfish, but Earth has incredible diversity in creatures that use venom. The screen showed a brown snake coiled on sandy ground. This is an inland taipan, the world's most venomous snake. One bite contains enough venom to kill 100 adult humans. The venom causes paralysis, bleeding, muscle damage, and kidney failure. Without treatment, death can occur in as little as 45 minutes. And humans live where these snakes exist? Zethrock asked. They live in Australia, which is home to many of the world's most venomous creatures. 9 of the 10 most venomous snakes on Earth live in Australia. There are also venomous spiders, venomous jellyfish, venomous octopi, venomous fish. Australia is particularly rich in creatures that can kill you. Danny showed images of a blue-ringed octopus, tiny and beautiful, with bright blue rings on its skin. This octopus is only 12 centimeters long, but it carries enough venom to kill 26 adult humans. There's no anti-venom. If someone is bitten, we can only provide life support and hope they survive until the venom wears off. The venom causes paralysis so complete that victims remain conscious but cannot move or breathe on their own. Chironel sat back down, looking overwhelmed. "Why would evolution create such creatures?" "Defense," Sophie explained. "These creatures are small and vulnerable. Venom is their protection. It's how they survive in a world full of predators. Every creature on Earth is involved in the same struggle: survive and reproduce. Venom is just one solution to that challenge." Jake decided it was time to add some perspective. "I know this seems overwhelming. But remember, humans have lived on Earth for hundreds of thousands of years. We've learned to identify dangerous creatures. We've developed anti-venoms and treatments. We've created technology to protect ourselves. Yes, people still die from these threats, but billions of humans live full, happy lives despite them." "How?" Krellman asked. "How do you function knowing that death could come from something as small as an insect bite or a tiny octopus?" "Knowledge," Lisa said. "We teach children from a young age about the dangers in their environment. We learn to recognize warning signs in animal behavior. We learn which areas to avoid and which precautions to take. We don't live in constant fear. We live with awareness." Sophie stood and walked to the center of the room. "I want to explain something important. You've seen many of Earth's dangerous creatures today, but what you haven't seen is how these creatures shaped humanity. Every threat made us smarter. Every danger taught us to cooperate. When our ancestors faced predators, they learned to work in groups. When they faced disease, they developed medicine. When they faced venomous creatures, they learned to observe and remember patterns. Your species was forged in fire," Zethrock said slowly. "In a way, yes, but it wasn't just suffering. It was adaptation. Earth didn't make us victims. It made us survivors. It made us innovators. Every challenge we overcame gave us new skills, new knowledge, new strength." Danny pulled up the final image for this section. It showed a small spider, brown and unremarkable. This is a Brazilian wandering spider. It's aggressive, fast, and its venom is neurotoxic. But here's what's interesting. Scientists have been studying the venom and discovering it might have medical applications. It might help treat heart conditions and even erectile dysfunction. A creature that can kill us might also help save lives. "You're saying even the dangerous creatures have value?" Chironel asked. "Everything has value," Sophie said. "That's what we've learned. Even the creatures that threaten us play important roles in ecosystems. Even their venoms and toxins can teach us things, can lead to new medicines, can help us understand biology better." Krellman was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke carefully. "When we eliminated dangerous creatures from our world, we thought we were advancing. We thought we were becoming more civilized. But now I wonder what we lost. Did we lose the drive to innovate? Did we lose the resilience that comes from facing challenges?" "Maybe," Jake said. "But you gained stability and peace. Those are valuable too." Neither path is wrong. They're just different. There's one more thing we need to discuss, Sophie said seriously. We've shown you insects, parasites, predators, venomous creatures. But we haven't talked about Earth's apex predator yet. The creature that's most dangerous, most successful, most adaptable. The three Valorians looked at each other nervously. What creature is that? Zethrock asked. Sophie smiled slightly. Humanity. We are Earth's deadliest creature, and understanding that is key to understanding who we are and what we're capable of. The room fell silent. The Valorians stared at the humans with new eyes, beginning to understand that the real revelation wasn't about Earth's fauna. It was about the species that had survived and thrived despite all of it. Tomorrow, Sophie said, we'll discuss human evolution and capabilities. I think you'll find it enlightening. The presentation ended, but the learning had only just begun. The next morning arrived with tension in the air. The Valorians had spent the previous evening in their ship, processing everything they had learned. Zethrock had sent a message to Jake requesting one final presentation before they made their report to the Confederation. They needed to understand humanity itself. The conference room was arranged differently today. Instead of facing each other across a table, the chairs were arranged in a semicircle facing the display screen. It felt less like a negotiation and more like a shared learning experience. Sophie stood at the front of the room with a small smile on her face. Jake sat among the Valorians, a gesture of equality that Zethrock appreciated with a nod. Today we're going to talk about humans, Sophie began, about how we became what we are, about what makes us Earth's apex predator despite not having venom, huge teeth, or massive size. She pulled up an image of early human ancestors, walking upright across an African plain. They looked small and vulnerable. This is where we started. Millions of years ago, our ancestors lived in Africa. They weren't the biggest, fastest, or strongest animals. They didn't have claws or fangs. They were prey more often than they were predators. Then how did they survive? Chironel asked. Intelligence and cooperation. Our ancestors learned to work together. A single human couldn't take down a large animal, but a group of humans with simple weapons could. They developed language to coordinate hunts. They learned to make tools from stones and wood. They discovered fire and used it for warmth, cooking, and protection. Sophie showed images of primitive tools, stone axes and spears. These don't look like much, but they changed everything. With tools, humans could hunt animals much larger and more dangerous than themselves. With fire, they could keep predators away at night. With language, they could teach each other, passing knowledge from generation to generation. Danny stood to add his perspective. There's something called persistence hunting. Early humans couldn't outrun prey in a sprint, but they could track animals for hours, for days if necessary. Humans have incredible endurance. We can keep moving long after other animals collapse from exhaustion. Our ancestors would chase prey until the animal literally couldn't run anymore, then move in for the kill. That's terrifying, Krellman said quietly. You're describing behavior like a horror story, an unstoppable pursuer that never gives up. From the prey's perspective, yes, Jake agreed. Humans are persistent. We don't give up easily. That trait helped us survive on Earth, and it's still part of who we are today. Lisa pulled up new images showing human migration patterns. Over hundreds of thousands of years, humans spread across the entire planet. We started in Africa and eventually reached every continent except Antarctica. We adapted to deserts, rainforests, mountains, Arctic regions. No other large mammal has successfully colonized so many different environments. How did you adapt so quickly? Zethrock asked. Evolution takes millions of years. We didn't rely on biological evolution alone, Sophie explained. We used cultural evolution. We learned to make clothing for cold climates. We learned to build shelters suited to different environments. We learned which plants were safe to eat in each region. We invented new tools for new challenges. Our bodies stayed mostly the same, but our knowledge and technology advanced rapidly. The screen showed images of human accomplishments. Ancient cities, sailing ships, the printing press, telescopes, computers, spacecraft. Every challenge we faced made us innovate, Sophie continued. When we needed to cross water, we built boats. When we needed to communicate across distances, we developed writing. When we wanted to see faraway objects, we invented telescopes. When we wanted to leave Earth, we built rockets. But here's what's most important, Jake said, standing up. We did all of this while dealing with the threats you've learned about. We built civilizations while fighting diseases. We created art and music and philosophy while living alongside predators. We reached for the stars while standing on a world that was constantly trying to kill us. Sophie pulled up video footage of various human activities: rock climbers scaling sheer cliffs, deep-sea divers exploring ocean trenches, researchers walking through jungles, astronauts floating in space. Humans actively seek out dangerous situations. We climb mountains that could kill us. We dive into oceans full of predators. We explore caves that might collapse. We launch ourselves into space where one small mistake means death. We do these things not because we have to, but because we want to. We're curious. We want to understand our world and the universe beyond it. That's insane, Shiranel said, but there was admiration in her voice. Maybe, Sophie agreed, but it's also what makes us human. We're not content with just surviving. We want to thrive. We want to learn. We want to explore. Living on a dangerous world didn't make us timid. It made us bold. Danny brought up new images showing human warfare. Ancient battles, modern conflicts, weapons ranging from swords to nuclear missiles. We need to address something uncomfortable, Danny said seriously. Humans are also dangerous to each other. Throughout our history, we've fought wars. We've developed weapons specifically designed to kill other humans. We've caused suffering not just from predators and disease, but from each other. The room was quiet. The Valorians looked troubled. "Why are you telling us this?" Krellman asked. "Because honesty matters," Jake said. "You need to understand all aspects of humanity. Yes, we're innovative and resilient, but we're also capable of violence. Living on a dangerous world taught us to fight, to defend ourselves, to be aggressive when necessary. Those same traits that helped us survive can also hurt us." Sophie nodded. "But here's what's important. We're learning. We're trying to be better. Over the last century, despite our growing population, deaths from warfare have decreased as a percentage of total population. We've created international laws. We've formed organizations to promote peace. We're working on it." "It's a process," Lisa added. "We're not perfect. We still have conflicts, still have problems. But we're aware of our flaws and we're actively trying to improve. That's what matters." Zethrock stood and walked to the window looking at Earth. "I'm beginning to understand. Your world made you strong, but also violent. It made you innovative, but also destructive. You're a species of contradictions." "Yes," Sophie said simply. "We're complex. We're capable of incredible cruelty and incredible kindness. We can destroy and we can create. We can hate and we can love. That's what makes us human." The captain turned back to face them. "When we arrived here, I thought the Valorian Confederation would teach Earth about galactic civilization. I thought we would guide you, mentor you, help you advance. But now I realize that's not what you need from us." "What do we need?" Jake asked. "Respect, partnership. You don't need teachers. You need equals. Your species has survived challenges that would have destroyed the Valorians. You've developed strengths we don't possess. Yes, you're younger in terms of space exploration, but you're not inferior. You're different, and those differences are valuable." Shiranel stood as well. "I need to apologize. When we first arrived, I looked at humans as primitive creatures who needed guidance. I was wrong. You're survivors. You're fighters. You're innovators born from necessity. Those are not weaknesses. They're strengths we've forgotten how to value." Krellman was quiet, studying his datapad. Finally, he spoke. "I've been analyzing the information you've provided. I've been comparing human development to Valorian development. Our species took twice as long to develop space travel, and we did it on a planet with virtually no threats. You developed it faster while fighting for survival every day." "That's remarkable," Sophie smiled. "We didn't know any other way. To us, this is normal. Every species develops in the context of their environment. You're not weak because you had an easier path. We're not superior because we had a harder one. We're just different. But those differences matter," Zethrock said. "The Confederation has grown complacent. We explore, we study, we catalog, but we don't struggle anymore. We've forgotten what it means to face real challenges. Perhaps we need to learn from Earth more than Earth needs to learn from us." Jake walked to stand beside the Valorian captain. "Then let's learn from each other. You have technology and knowledge that could help humanity. We have perspectives and experiences that could help the Confederation. Partnership works best when both sides have something to offer." "Agreed," Zethrock said, extending his hand. Jake shook it firmly, and this time the Valorian understood the gesture completely. Sophie began shutting down her presentation. "There's one more thing you should know. Everything I've shown you, all the dangerous creatures, all the threats, they're still here. Earth hasn't gotten safer, but we've gotten better at surviving. Every generation learns from the last. Every child is taught about the dangers and how to navigate them. We're not trying to eliminate the challenges. We're learning to live with them. That's the difference between our species, Chironel said thoughtfully. We removed our challenges. You embraced yours. Both approaches have merit, Lisa said diplomatically. Your world is peaceful and stable. That's worth something. Our world is dangerous but dynamic. That's also worth something. Krellman stood and approached Sophie. Thank you for this education. I came here thinking... 3 weeks had passed since the Valorian delegation returned to their ship. During that time, Jake and his team had continued regular communications with Zethrock. The tone of their conversations had changed completely. Where once there had been condescension, now there was genuine respect and curiosity. Then the message arrived that changed everything. Jake was in his quarters when the priority alert sounded. He rushed to the command center where Sophie and Danny were already reviewing an incoming transmission from the Valorian Confederation. Commander Morrison? Zethrock's face appeared on the screen, but his expression was troubled. We need your help. The Confederation is facing a situation we're not prepared to handle. Jake leaned forward. What kind of situation? A hostile species called the Crethon Collective has entered our territory. They're aggressive, unpredictable, and they're not responding to diplomatic overtures. They've already attacked 2 of our outposts. Our defensive forces are struggling to counter their tactics. They don't fight the way we're accustomed to. Sophie exchanged a glance with Jake. And you think we can help? Yes. Since learning about Earth, I've come to realize that the Valorian approach to conflict is limited. We rely heavily on technology and standard protocols. But the Crethons are erratic. They use ambush tactics. They strike without warning and retreat before we can respond. They're unpredictable, aggressive like the predators from your world. You need someone who understands predator behavior, Danny said, understanding immediately. Exactly. The Confederation Council has authorized me to request Earth's assistance. We're not asking you to fight for us. We're asking you to teach us how to think differently, how to respond to threats that don't follow predictable patterns. Jake stood straight. We'll need to assemble a team. How soon do you need us? As soon as possible. We can have a ship at your station within 12 hours to transport your team to the conflict zone. After the transmission ended, Jake called an emergency meeting. Within an hour, he had assembled a team of specialists. Sophie would analyze the Crethon biology and behavior patterns. Danny would advise on tactical approaches based on predator strategies. Lisa would assess any biological threats the Crethons might pose. And Colonel Peter Hayes, a military strategist with 30 years of experience, would coordinate the overall response. Peter was a serious man with gray hair and sharp eyes. He had fought in several conflicts and understood combat psychology better than anyone Jake knew. So we're going to teach aliens how to fight other aliens, Peter said, reviewing the mission briefing. That's a new one. We're teaching them how to think like survivors, Jake corrected. The Valorians have the technology. They just don't have the mindset. They've been safe for too long. 12 hours later, the human team boarded a Valorian transport ship. The journey to the conflict zone took 3 days. During that time, the team studied everything they could about the Crethon Collective and the Valorian defensive capabilities. The Crethons were an insectoid species, similar to Earth's ants but much larger and more intelligent. They worked in coordinated groups, attacking in swarms and overwhelming defenses through sheer numbers and aggression. They didn't seem to value individual life, which made them particularly dangerous. Losing soldiers didn't deter them. They're like army ants, Danny observed, studying footage of Crethon attacks. They move in massive groups, consume everything in their path, and don't stop until they've achieved their objective or been completely destroyed. The Valorians are trying to fight them with defensive formations and superior firepower, Peter noted. But the Crethons just keep coming. They accept losses that would make any reasonable species retreat. Sophie was analyzing Crethon biology. They have a hive structure. Most of the soldiers are sterile workers serving a queen. They're biologically driven to sacrifice themselves for the collective. You can't intimidate them or negotiate with them. They only understand strength and defeat, Lisa added, and they're adapted to harsh environments. They can survive in conditions that would kill most species. That's why the Valorians' environmental defenses aren't working. When they arrived at the Valorian command station, Zethrock greeted them personally. The stress of the conflict showed on his face. Behind him, Krellman and Chironel waited, both looking relieved to see the humans. "Thank you for coming," Zethrock said. "The situation has worsened. The Crethons attacked another outpost yesterday. We evacuated in time, but we lost the facility. They're getting closer to our core systems." Peter got straight to business. "Show me your defensive positions, your tactical responses, everything you've tried so far." For the next several hours, the human team reviewed Valorian strategies. It quickly became clear what the problem was. The Valorians were fighting a conventional war against an unconventional enemy. "You're thinking of them as rational actors," Peter explained to the Valorian commanders. "You're expecting them to retreat when they take heavy losses. You're expecting them to avoid risky attacks, but they don't think that way. They're driven by instinct and collective purpose. You need to stop thinking like diplomats and start thinking like survivors facing a predator." "How do we do that?" one of the Valorian officers asked. Sophie stepped forward. "On Earth, when we face aggressive animal swarms, we don't try to fight every individual. We target the source. We find the nest, the hive, the breeding ground. Cut off the head and the body dies." "You're suggesting we find their queen?" Chironel asked. "Yes. The workers are expendable to the Crethons, but the queen isn't. She's the reproductive center of their entire operation. Find her and you change the nature of the conflict entirely." Danny pulled up tactical maps. "But first you need to stop letting them dictate the terms of engagement. They attack your positions because you're defending them. That's predictable. Instead, use what they're not expecting. Set traps. Create false targets. Make them come to you on your terms, not theirs. Like ambush predators on Earth," Krellman said, understanding. "You're suggesting we think like crocodiles, not prey." "Exactly. The Crethons are aggressive, but that aggression makes them predictable in its own way. They'll attack any perceived weakness. So show them weakness, but make it a trap." Peter began coordinating with the Valorian tactical teams. They identified a pattern in Crethon attacks. The swarms always moved toward energy signatures, particularly power generators. The humans suggested placing false generators in strategic locations, rigged with explosives. Lisa contributed by analyzing Crethon biology to find weaknesses. She discovered that while the Crethons could survive in harsh environments, they were vulnerable to certain frequencies of sound. The humans helped the Valorians modify their weapons to emit these frequencies, creating disorientation in Crethon swarms. Sophie worked on locating the Crethon queen. By studying attack patterns and movement trajectories, she calculated the most likely location of their base. It was in an asteroid field hidden among hundreds of rocks. "That's why you couldn't find it," Sophie explained. "They're using the same strategy as Earth insects use when they nest underground. Hidden, protected, sending out workers while the queen stays safe." "How do we reach it?" Zethrock asked. "You don't send a fleet," Peter said. "That's what they're expecting. You send a small team, fast and quiet. Get in, eliminate or capture the queen, and get out before they can respond." "That's extremely risky," a Valorian admiral objected. "Yes," Jake agreed, "but so is letting them continue to attack your worlds. Sometimes the best defense is a targeted offense. That's a lesson Earth learned thousands of years ago." The plan was set. The Valorians would create a diversion with false targets and modified weapons. While the Crethon swarms were engaged with these traps, a small strike team would infiltrate the asteroid field and target the queen. Jake insisted that he and Peter join the strike team. Zethrock tried to refuse, saying they shouldn't risk human lives for a Valorian problem, but Jake was firm. "We're partners now. That means we face threats together. Besides, you need someone on that team who knows how to fight dirty." "That's us." The operation launched at dawn station time. The false targets drew massive Crethon swarms, just as predicted. The sound weapons disrupted their coordination, causing confusion. While the main Valorian forces engaged the swarms, the strike team slipped through the asteroid field. Jake, Peter, Zethrock, and 3 Valorian soldiers approached the Crethon base. It was built into a large asteroid with multiple entrances defended by warrior Crethons. "We can't fight through all of them," one of the Valorian soldiers said. "We don't need to," Peter replied. "We just need to get inside." "Danny, you reading this?" Back on the command station, Danny was monitoring feeds from the strike team. "I'm seeing a ventilation shaft on the north side. It's small, but you should be able to fit." Just like infiltrating a termite mound, Jake said, moving toward the shaft. Never thought my childhood experiences destroying wasp nests would be useful in space. They crawled through the narrow shaft, emerging inside the asteroid base. The interior was maze-like, with tunnels going in every direction. But Sophie had predicted the Queen would be at the center, the most protected location. They moved quickly and quietly. When they encountered Crethon workers, Peter's team neutralized them efficiently. The Valorians were